Hello, everyone. My name is Mr. Rage, and today we are going to be talking about one of the greatest survival horror games ever made. And before I start talking about this game, I just want to say I think it's really, really unfortunate how underrated this game is. And one thing that actually kind of pisses me off is the reason why this game is underrated is because of the fans of the first game. Let me ask you guys something. Like, what exactly did the first game do that was so much better than the second game? Because apparently fans of the first Evil Within were disappointed with the Evil Within 2. Like, honestly, what did this game do that was not as good as what the first game did? Because this game improves upon literally everything that was good in the first game while adding in and bringing in new things that make this game all the more better than it already is than the first game. So honestly, I don't understand how underrated this game is, because it's so good. Like, I look at this game the same way people look at Silent Hill 2 or Resident Evil 4 or PT Silent Hill. Like, I love this game. It's fun, it's intense, it's challenging, it's terrifying at times, it's tension filled. This game really, really got me immersed as well. Like, I literally forgot about my reality while playing this game at one point. So I really enjoyed this game. So yes, this is going to be a very, very positive review, although I always be sure to add in criticisms as well. But honestly, I do not have a lot of criticisms for this game. I mean, there are some, but in my own personal opinion, The Evil Within 2 is perfect. This is not only one of the best horror games ever made, to me, it's one of the best games ever made in general. This is a game that was made with nothing but love and care, and that is something that I could really appreciate, because obviously it is the reason why this game is so good. You could tell that the people who made this game truly cared about actually making something amazing for us, the gamers, to experience, and that they did, and they did it better. I love this game so much. This is definitely one of my favorite games of all time, one of my favorite survival horror games of all time. This game is a masterpiece. Like, I'm sorry, but this game is a masterpiece. For all of the disappointed fans of The Evil Within 1, I'm sorry, but your opinion sucks to me. Like, seriously, your opinion sucks to me. Like, I know that may sound kind of disrespectful, but I don't get how people can not think this game is not as good as The Evil Within 1, because this game did so many amazing things. The story was amazing, the characters were good, the gameplay was spectacular, even the scares and the puzzles were better, and the mechanics. This game does what every sequel should do: improve upon the first game while also trying to be better in every other aspect as well. And this game does it masterfully. So let's get straight into the review now. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is honestly the open world. This game literally takes the survival horror formula and gives it a horrifying mix of steroids and crack cocaine, because that is pretty much what this game's gameplay is. It is a survival horror game, but it is set inside of an open world. The setting for this game is fucking amazing. Like, I honestly don't think they could have chosen a better setting for The Evil Within 2. It's so good, it just gives me hype, man. Like, the setting, the concept, and the execution was executed so amazingly well in The Evil Within. You're basically inside of a small little town. And now, is the open world, is it GTA big? Is it Far Cry big? Is it Arkham City big? No. It's not extremely massive, but it's still a good sized open world for a game of its nature. And I love how the developers done such a good job at combining open world exploration with the typical survival horror formula that you would expect from a survival horror game. You've got resource management, you've got, looking for things like med kits, ammo, as well as crafting, because the game also brings in an awesome crafting system, which was not in the first game, because in the first game, the only thing that you was able to craft was just agony crossbows for your, agony bowgun. But in this game, you can craft just about everything. You can craft things like med kits, ammo. That's pretty much all you really need in the game. I mean, there's not a lot of other items that you need, But the thing I like about the exploration in this game is not just the actual exploration, but the setting. The town that you explore in this game looks amazing. Like it's very, very reminiscent of Silent Hill. Like if you enjoyed the setting of Silent Hill, then you're gonna love The Evil Within 2 because it's kind of like the same thing actually. You're basically inside of an abandoned town. And the thing about the town is it doesn't look lifeless. Like all the buildings and the houses, it looks like they're still occupied by people, but the thing is, everyone is already dead. And that also makes the town seem very, very dark and ominous, since the town that you're in, it still looks occupied. It looks like any other town in the United States, but it's literally abandoned because everyone is already dead. And we'll talk about the enemies in a minute because the enemies, we'll talk about that in a minute. But the setting and the execution for The Evil Within 2 was great. The town looks great. The graphics look awesome. I also just like the art design of the open world as well. Every building, every house, every little store, even the little sheds and the garages, it looks like a typical, neighborhood and a typical town somewhere in the United States, and they made it look so realistic. This obviously adds a whole lot of immersion into the experience as well. And with immersion, that just makes the game even scarier when you realize that this town is not what it seems to be, since, well, like I said, everyone is already dead. And another great thing about the exploration is it actually gives the player a reason for exploring in the first place, because obviously this is a survival horror game. You're basically hunting for resources, things like ammo, medkits, as well as collectibles, because the game also has collectibles as well. One other thing I want to talk about is you get this little device in the game that basically lets you see a fragment from the past, and it basically replays for you. These are basically called residential memories, and they are scattered throughout the town. So that's a cool little thing as well that they added into the game as well. But as I was saying, the exploration goes great in this game because it gives the player a reason for exploring, because there are lots of things that need to be found in the game. It's not just ammo and medical kits. There's other things that could be found as well. Bottles also make a return from the Evil Within 1. And we'll talk about the stealth in a minute because the stealth is also really good. But yeah, and not only that, but running out of ammo while you're in the open world, or while you're basically inside of like the town, this is a lot more tension filled in The Evil Within 2 than it is in other survival horror games. Because the thing is, usually in other survival horror games, you're inside of, you're not really in outside environments. You're usually indoors, whether it be an estate mansion, a police station, or, an asylum, or a small village even. This game, since it takes place outside and inside of an open world, running out of ammo or running out of resources, or just, running low on resources, this adds a lot of tension into the game as well, because the open world, although it's not huge, it's still pretty big. And obviously, you're being hunted down by horrifying creatures. Let's talk about the enemies real quick. The enemies in this game are a whole lot worse than the enemies from the first game. The enemies from the first game were more like slow-moving killers that were dangerous in groups. But in this game, the enemies are a lot more dangerous, they're a lot more faster, and they are a lot more aggressive. And they will quickly overwhelm you almost just as fast as the enemies from the first game, since the enemies in this game are a whole lot more aggressive. And for the first time, the enemies actually add in most of the tension because of how dangerous they are. This is something that every survival horror game should do, because I feel like not enough survival horror games actually do that in the first place, because in a lot of other survival horror games, you're afraid of running out of ammo. That's what you're afraid of. But in The Evil Within 2, you're afraid of running out of ammo, but you're also even more afraid of the enemies in general because of just how dangerous they actually are. Like I said, while in packs, these new enemies could quickly overwhelm you, and they could kill you extremely quickly. They will gang up on you, and some of them also use weapons. Just like in the first game, they will throw stuff at you, they will use axes, which take even more health out of you, and they will grab you as well. And they'll do like this little grab attack, which also takes away a lot of health. And they are not tame at all. Like, you'll get grabbed by one enemy, and if there's multiple enemies with you, one will grab you, and the others will just start, punching you and, clawing you and stuff. So the enemies in The Evil Within 2 are a whole lot more aggressive than the first game's enemies. And no, they don't use guns or explosives like they did in the first one. That was just dumb as shit. I hated that about the first Evil Within. Made it really unnecessarily difficult. No, the enemies in this game are your typical horrifying monsters, zombies, whatever you want to call them. And yes, like I said, they bring in most of the tension because since these enemies are so aggressive, running out of ammo while in the open world town, this makes things so much more tension filled because not only are you being hunted down by dangerous enemies, but since the open world is so big, this makes it even harder to actually find resources like medical supplies or ammo, or even things to craft, because even the things used to craft do not come in very high supplies. I mean, they're not hidden throughout the open world, but they're not really easy to find either. You know what I mean? Like, because the open world is just so big. Like, running out of ammo in this game is nearly a death sentence, especially if you are either low on health or if you are being chased by a large number of these enemies. And not only that, but since the open world is so big, this also adds in even more tension since there are pretty much enemies around every environment, and there are also different enemies as well. Yes, the enemy variety is also even better in The Evil Within 2. You don't just have these little ravenous aggressive zombies, you also have even more horrific enemies. My favorite has got to be like this Wendigo-like monster. It basically crawls on all fours, it is grotesque looking, and it has multiple heads on both its front side and its back side, and it is extremely fast. The second enemy is kind of like this little, she reminds me a lot of the witch from Left 4 Dead. Like, if you've played Left 4 Dead, she's a lot like the witch. She basically goes into this frenzy if she spots you or if you try and attack her, and she could kill you pretty quick. The third and final enemy of the game, for the first part anyways, is this really, really gross, grotesque looking motherfucker. It's really tall looking. It has like 7 arms on its body and has like a fucking ostrich head. And it throws these like, it's a lot like the Boomer from Left 4 Dead as well. It basically throws like these little vial bombs at you that explode and take away health, but it also is an insta-kill enemy as well. If it gets its hands on you or its multiple hands, it'll kill you quickly. So the enemy variety combined with the open world, this makes the open world feel so much more fun and tension-filled because not only is running out of ammo nearly a death sentence since the open world is so big, but even while you're out hunting for resources, there's pretty much danger around every corner. And since the open world is so big, you always have to be worried because you're like, okay, what am I going to run into next? Is it going to be one of those, is it going to be like one of those witch-like enemies? Is it going to be one of those, I don't know what you call the enemies in this game. I actually don't know what you call them, but every enemy in this game is dangerous. And since the open world is so big, exploring the open world and the fear of coming across one of these enemies makes the gameplay very, very tension-filled as well. And the resource management is also so good as well because since, again, you're in the open world, the player feels more inclined to actually try and hold some of their ammo before just, going on a frenzy and killing everything. Now, let's talk about, let's see, we talked about exploration. Okay, let's talk about the combat real quick. So, the combat in The Evil Within 2, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's not as, it feels a little nerfed compared to the first game's combat. The first game's combat seemed a teeny bit more satisfying. But as I said, the main enemies that you fight in this game is mainly these feral zombie-like creatures, and like I said earlier, they will quickly overwhelm you. But the thing is, when you do get enough ammo in this game for like your shotgun or a sniper rifle or your pistol, fighting large groups of enemies in this game is pretty satisfying. Like when you have enough ammo, it is satisfying to actually fight these things because just like in the first Evil Within, these things will fight you in packs. Like there's not going to be a lot of moments where you only fight one or two of these guys. Like for the most part, most of the enemies in this game are either in packs of 3 or the maximum sometimes even 5 or 6 or 7. Yes, you do fight lots of enemies in this game all at one time. And if you don't have enough ammo, then you better start running. We'll talk about some of the other options that the player has in a minute, as well as some of the other mechanics. Stealth is also one of them, but when you have enough ammo in the game, it is pretty satisfying fighting the enemies in this game, you know, fighting large groups of them. Another thing that makes a cool return is tactile play. You could play this game more tactically, either using stealth or using things in the environment. Just like in the first game, explosive barrels also make a return, but you also have new things like gas on the floor, which can be enlightened by shooting it and could basically burn enemies who are standing on, obviously. This is a lot like the matches from the first game, except for it's not as easy, because obviously you have to get the enemies to actually stand on the puddle of gas that you enlight with your bullets in order to actually burn them. So tactile play does make a return here, as well as the Agony Crossbow. The Agony Crossbow comes back in all of its amazing glory. You get the same bolts for the most part. You get your freeze bolt, you get your smoke bolt, you get the explosive one, you get the harpoon. The harpoon is really good in this game as well. It's actually an insta-kill depending on how much you've upgraded it, and we'll talk about the upgrade in a minute. But for the most part, the combat in The Evil Within 2, it is pretty good. It's also very intense as well, because especially with certain enemies, because like I said, since the game has good enemy variety, there are different enemies in the game that are either more dangerous or take more health, but are easier to kill, you know, etc., etc. You've got the witch-like enemy. The witch enemy, I'm just going to call it the witch from Left 4 Dead, because that's pretty much what it is. She takes a lot of damage, but she is vulnerable to headshots. Getting a headshot in this game is a requirement for success, especially when fighting large groups of enemies, because the enemies in this game are pretty damn tough. They do take a lot of shots, even on the normal difficulty. One useful mechanic that they brought in for The Evil Within 2 is definitely the stomp mechanic. Again, this is kind of like the matches from the first game, but again, a little bit more simplified. Basically, when you knock an enemy down, you could quickly finish them off with a stomp attack, which is, yes, an insta-kill. So it's pretty much the matches from the first game, but more easier. The combat in this game in general is a bit more easier compared to the first game, even though the enemies are a lot more feral and aggressive. But yeah, fighting different enemies also makes the combat feel different. Certain enemies should be fought from a distance, like that one enemy that could throw, like, you know, vomit at you. That enemy should not be approached closely, because she could insta-kill you by grabbing you. So that enemy should definitely be fought at a distance. And then you have other enemies like the little Wendigo-like thing, like basically like it's like the more animal or dog-like enemy I was telling you about earlier. That enemy is easier to kill but takes more damage and is a lot faster. Using a sniper rifle is best suited for fighting that one, or maybe the Agony Crossbow. And using the Agony Crossbow for tactical play also makes a glorifying return in The Evil Within 2 as well. You know, you could set up traps like you could in the first game with the explosive bolts, or the electric bolt, or the freeze bolt. So the Agony Crossbow and the sniper rifle, as well as the shotgun, are your best weapons in this game, because all three of these weapons can be used for more tactile or strategy-like combat. And the second form of strategy-like combat you have is, of course, the stealth. The stealth mechanics in The Evil Within 2 is a whole lot better than it was in the first game. You even have kind of like this cool little cover mechanic. Kind of like in your typical shooter, you could basically take cover and you can move from one side of cover to the other with the push of a button. Another cool thing I like about this is, say you're taking cover right next to a door. Well, you could actually slowly open a door while you're still in cover. This was such an awesome mechanic, because this makes the game feel so realistic. And when you combine that with its awesome and realistic looking open world, that just makes it even better. We're going to talk a bit more about exploration in a sec. But yeah, stealth in this game is amazing. Stealth killing enemies is also a bit easier as well. I remember in the first game, if an enemy was crouched down, you actually couldn't stealth kill him, but you could pretty much stealth kill an enemy no matter what in this game. I actually don't know if you could throw bottles at them and do an insta-kill like you could in the first game. I have not tried that yet, but As I said earlier, bottles also make a return in the Evil Within 2 as well. Although, for whatever reason, every time I tried to throw a bottle to distract an enemy in this game, it didn't work for some reason. So I'm not sure if that was maybe a bug or something. I don't know. But the stealth and the combat in the Evil Within 2 is awesome. The enemy variety is good. The combat is good. Of course, you also have Sebastian's melee attack as well, although it doesn't do a whole lot of damage, but there are cool little takedowns. Basically, when an enemy is on low health, if you try and melee attack them, Sebastian does this awesome little takedown on them, which is really satisfying to execute. It reminds me a lot of those glory kills from the Doom series. So, next thing I want to talk about, again, is the exploration. Now, not the whole game takes place outside. There are plenty of moments where you do actually go inside of buildings like your typical survival horror game. You've got things like underground labs, you've got things like museums, you've got an underground facility as well that you can basically teleport to. And as you progress through the game, new areas actually unlock. New parts of the town will unlock, and you obviously also get to visit new areas from different chapters as well. I also like how this game is not as much of a level-like thing like the first Evil Within, because the first Evil Within was basically levels, but in this game, each new area you get to is seamless. Like, there's no cutscenes or no load screens or anything. Like, as you progress the story through the game, you basically get to unlock new areas to explore. And yes, for the most part, most of these areas are enclosed places, you know, buildings, houses, etc., etc. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention is while exploring the open world, there are some houses and some buildings that you do get to, well, obviously all the buildings you get to, not all of them, but there are like houses that you get to open up as well. And we'll talk about the psychological segments as well, because this game has plenty of amazing psychological horror segments as well. But yeah, the exploration in this game is fantastic. It's very adventurous because just like the first game, because the first game had so many fun settings to explore, the Evil Within 2 has even more fun settings to explore. Even if they're not all outside, the buildings and the areas, like the enclosed areas that you explore in this game, are pretty damn good. The settings are good, and even the look and artwork, just like the actual town, Union, it's all really good. So the exploration in this game is fantastic, and again, that just goes so much even better with the resource management as well. And I want to talk quickly about the game's crafting system for a minute. As well as safe houses, because you also have safe houses in this game as well. And the cool part is, you have safe houses pretty much everywhere, except for some of the buildings that you explore while, you know, on missions. There are also some side missions as well, although unfortunately there is not a lot of them. This is one negative with the game that I kind of have, because I feel like this was a bit of a missed opportunity. I think there's only like 3 side missions in this game, and like I said, I think that's a bit of a missed opportunity. I think there could have definitely been some more fun side missions to go with it as well. But so be it, I guess, you know, oh well. So but yeah, you have safe houses everywhere, and in these safe houses, you could either upgrade your weapons, because there's also weapon upgrades as well. And let's talk about the upgrading system real quick. Now, the upgrading system is also a lot better in this game than it was in the first Evil Within. Now, you have 2 types of upgrade resources. You have your green gel, which you get from killing enemies, all enemies, by the way. And then you also have weapon parts, as well as gunpowder. Gunpowder is basically used to craft bullets, and weapon parts are used to upgrade your gun's abilities, whether it be your fire rate, its clip capacity, or its stomping power, which is, you know, obviously, of course, how strong your weapon basically is. This adds a lot more variety in my opinion, because, you know, using green gel on both your weapons and your character's abilities was definitely a little pricey for your green gel. So I do like how they basically give you 2 options now on how to upgrade your weapons and your character. Again, this also brings in better resource management as well, because while hunting in the open world, or any area for that point, you're also looking for things like upgrade parts for your guns as well as gunpowder. So while in these safe houses you could upgrade your guns, you could also craft bullets as well. But you could also upgrade your character just like in the first game. And Sebastian also does have better stats to upgrade as well. You've got better stamina, you've got stealth, you got better stealth to upgrade. There's also one really cool ability in the upgrade system that basically allows you to dodge enemy attacks. And your character does this themselves. Like, there's no button prompt as well. I think there kind of should have been a button prompt, honestly, but it's okay. There's another upgrade that also allows you to kick down an enemy who is stunned. So that's another cool little upgrade. And then you've got the more typical things like upgrading your health, your stamina, your syringe recovery, how much health you get back from a syringe, or things like stealth. There is a really cool stealth ability that I actually recommend that allows you to stealth kill an enemy while you are in cover. Like, if an enemy is coming up next to you while you're in cover, you could actually pop up and stealth kill them while you're still in cover. So that's one awesome upgrade ability that I actually recommend you guys get immediately because it is extremely useful. There's another one that actually allows you to use your bottles more effectively because instead of throwing bottles, there's one upgrade that basically allows you to use the bottles in your inventory system to smash it over an enemy's face, which is both funny and satisfying all at the same time. It also allows you to come up with a cheeky little follow-up attack when an enemy tries to grab you in the first place. So that's another cool little upgrade to also put some green gel in. So yeah, the upgrade system is awesome in this game. One other missed opportunity is you don't really need to be in a safe house to actually upgrade your weapons, though. You have this thing in your inventory system called field upgrading. I think this kind of takes away some of the tension because while exploring the open world or any other area for that point, when you're out of ammo, that makes the game more tension filled. But the fact that you could just craft ammo on the spot by just going into your inventory system, I think that kind of takes away a little bit of the tension and kind of makes the game a little too easy, in my opinion. But that's not really a criticism. That's just more of a small little nitpick, honestly. But yeah, guys, that pretty much covers the gameplay side of The Evil Within. The only other thing I've talked about besides the exploration, the stealth, and the combat is the puzzles and the objectives. Now, The Evil Within 2 does have a lot, and I mean a lot, of puzzles and objectives. And the puzzles are also a lot better than they were in the first game. The puzzles were actually pretty simple in the first game, not gonna lie. I mean, even a child could have probably solved the puzzles in the first game. The puzzles in this game are a lot better, but one cool thing about The Evil Within is there is also no backtracking as well. Although, since this is an open world game, you do have the option of being able to explore any previously discovered location or any previously unlocked location. Like any new location that you unlocked by progressing through the story, you have the option of being able to explore that location again whenever you want, because this game does not hold you down. This game does not have any restrictions. This is an open world game for the most part, and you do get to explore pretty much every area that you have unlocked throughout progressing the game's story, which is very, very cool. Like, even the buildings and the new areas that are, for the story, like, you get to explore them again. And no, the puzzles do not come back with them. The puzzles and the objectives is a one-time thing. The objectives and the puzzles, there's not too many of them, and there's not enough of them. Like, it's not like that. Like, there's not too many or not too like, there's a perfect amount of them, you know what I mean? Like, there's a good amount of puzzles and objectives. And the thing about the objectives is these are not simple objectives either. Similar to the Outlast games, some of the objectives that you're being forced to complete in this game, it's done while you're being hunted by an enemy. For example, there's one part in this game where you're looking for a key while this terrifying monster is hunting you. And this is also in a very claustrophobic area as well. So the objectives and the puzzles in The Evil Within 2, they're pretty good. They're pretty good. Last part about the gameplay is some segments. Now, these are basically psychological horror segments. Throughout the open world and throughout the game in general, there are these moments where this really, really terrifying ghost, or whatever you want to call it, basically shifts the area around you and transports you into this different alternate reality type thing. There's like this monster. It's not like, it looks more like a ghost, honestly. It's like this horrifying ghost looking thing. And it's also an insta-kill enemy, and it basically starts hunting you down. These are really, really tense stealth segments because, like I said, this thing could instantly kill you. There is no fighting back against this thing. And at random parts of the game, it just shows up and teleports you to its little twisted alternate reality. And most of the time it does this it's usually in really small claustrophobic areas too. So you're for the most part right next to this thing. Like you're literally like 5 feet away from this thing as it's hunting you down. You're like just hiding behind the wall, just praying it doesn't come next to you. So these are some really, really tense stealth segments as well. And while you're being hunted down by this thing, you're also being forced to solve very complicated objectives, like looking for a key card while it's hunting you down. It could also teleport you objects. Yeah, just to make it all the more worse. It also does it in the open world as well. Although while it teleports you in the open world, it's not as intense though, because in the open world you have a lot more places to run. One thing I forgot to mention as well is before you upgrade your character, you are not as weak as you were in the first game. Like Sebastian could run for a good amount of time, and his gun, while not extremely powerful, it still does a good amount of damage. Of course, you also do find different weapons in this game as well. This also makes exploring the open world even better. And just exploring the game in general, actually exploring the game's environments, because exploring the game's environments not only rewards you with resources, but also new guns. This is how you find the Agony Crossbow, the shotgun. There's also a moment where you get to find a sniper rifle, but you have to find its parts. Thankfully, these things are marked on your map, although I think it would have been better if the player would have actually been forced to just find them by just exploring, because that would have made the exploring a little bit better. But it's okay, these are mostly just small little nitpicks. Don't let this let you think that like this is me criticizing the game. These are just small little nitpicks, but yeah. There are also other small little tense stealth segments, although they are nowhere near as intense as these moments where you are basically trapped inside these rooms with this horrifying ghost. The look of this enemy is also terrifying as well. Like, when she's next to you, your controller starts shaking, and so does the actual area. It's like it is terrifying. The way she looks, the sound she makes is terrifying as well. So yeah, that about covers pretty much the gameplay side of the game. There are also some moments where you have an AI companion, just like in the first game. So that's always cool, except for this time you don't actually get to heal them like you did in the first game. Because remember in the first game, if Joseph was being injured, you could heal him. Well, in this game, you can't do that for your AI partner for whatever reason. But that about does it for most of the gameplay side. Next, we are going to talk about the boss fights. The boss fights in The Evil Within 2, they are kind of a mixed bag for me. I think I could kind of see why some Evil Within fans were a bit disappointed. While there are definitely some fun boss fights in The Evil Within 2, not a lot of them feel as challenging as they were in the first game. The boss fights, or like the villains in general in this game, do not seem as memorable as the ones from the first Evil Within. You had guys like, the Executioner, or the Keeper, or Boxman, whatever. That guy has more names than every villain in this game in general, or the Evil Within franchise in general. But you had Boxhead Man, you had Laura, you had Ruvik, you had the Guardian, which was not the Guardian, but like, there was this one enemy in the first Evil Within. It was like this giant-ass monster. The boss fight of Chapter 10. The Evil Within 2's boss fights, they look good. They're cool and all, but they just don't seem as difficult or as memorable as they were in the first game. I think the only actual really good boss fight was probably Stefano Valentini. He was definitely a cool villain, because the thing about him is he added variety, because most of the villains from the first Evil Within were not human. They were all grotesque, disgusting monsters and, all that. But except for the Keeper, I mean, even the Keeper was pretty much a monster. I mean, he was more of a humanoid. The thing about Stefano is Stefano looks human. He is human, but he has supernatural powers. So that's what made him cool. Stefano was a good villain. The only other villain in this game that's kind of good or reminiscent from the villains of the first game was probably the Guardian. The Guardian was definitely a cool villain. She's basically this hulking beast. She has like multiple heads and body parts on her. She reminds me a lot of Dredge from Dead by Daylight, honestly, because she has like all these body parts on her, and she has like a giant ass buzzsaw, and she is fucking huge, and she charges at you. Like the Charger from Left 4 Dead type shit. So she was definitely a cool boss as well. And the cool part is, after you defeat her in her chapter, she actually starts hunting you throughout the open world. Well, not the main open world, because there's a certain part of the open world that you could teleport to. Yeah, there's teleportation in this game as well, forgot to mention. There's one part of the town or union, whatever you call it, and she'll start hunting you, and every time you kill her, she'll come back. This reminds me a lot of what Nemesis was supposed to be from Resident Evil 3, so that's always cool. But yeah, for the most part, the boss fights, the boss fights are okay. They're not bad. I mean, they're not horrible. They're not bad, but they're, in my opinion, they're nowhere near as much of a threat nor as challenging as they were from the first game, because I feel like the first game had much better boss fights. Although there is a fun little moment in The Evil Within 2 where you actually fight the 3 main bosses from the first game again. There's this one enemy in the game called Theodore, who's like this manipulative type enemy, and he basically makes your character Sebastian start hallucinate, and you basically fight all 3 of like the main bad guys from the first Evil Within. The sadist, the chainsaw guy, the keeper, and Laura. So that was a cool little moment. That was a cool little moment. So yeah, for me, boss fights, the boss fights were okay. The final boss fight was definitely the worst. It was very, very weird. It was very, very action, a little too action for my opinion. Definitely not very scary. Yeah, the first boss fight sucked in my opinion. Because the last boss fight, and the well, maybe not the first boss fight. I mean, the Guardian was okay. The Guardian's the first boss fight. It was all right. I mean, it wasn't terrible. The first boss fight and the last boss fight sucked in my opinion. I mean, the Guardian was the first boss fight, and she was way more terrifying when she was actually just hunting you throughout the open world. I wish it could have been more like that. I wish like she would have just been like the one that was hunting you, like Mr. X. Like, I remember Mr. X from Resident Evil 2. Like, I think it would have been better if the Guardian was more of like a stalker type enemy more than a boss enemy, because her first boss fight, it was not really good in my opinion. But the last boss fight was even worse though. The last boss fight, it's literally a cum monster. It's like, she looks like some kind of fucking semen monster. So the first boss fight and the last boss fight, not very good. I think the best boss fight in The Evil Within 2 was definitely Stefano, because as you're fighting him, he could basically teleport, and he could teleport right over to you, and he could do this grab attack that takes a hell of a lot of health. So I think Stefano was definitely the game's best and most challenging boss fight. As well as this fire type enemy. There's like this one enemy with a gas mask that has a flamethrower, and similar to the Guardian, after you defeat this boss fight for the first time, they'll actually start stalking you and appearing in the open world. So, that was another decent boss fight. Yeah, that pretty much covers the boss fight. Next thing we're going to talk about is the game's scare factor. Now, just like the first Evil Within, The Evil Within 2, besides the tension, the cool part about The Evil Within 2 is The Evil Within 2 does a great job at combining survival horror tension as well as psychological mind-bending horror. There are moments in this game, like there are these down moments where you're just walking around these really dark corridors and these really dark buildings, and you start hearing noises everywhere, and the environment starts shifting and changing around you. This is psychological horror at its finest. I mean, it reminds me a lot of Layers of Fear or Silent Hill. There's also a lot of body horror as well. The Evil Within 2 basically combines body horror, psychological horror, as well as disturbing imagery horror. Stefano is not only the best villain in this game because of his look and his appearance, and also because of his, basically the concept, but he's basically this really twisted, fucked up artist. Let me show you guys some screenshots that I took so you could get what I'm talking about. His art looks terrifying. Now where is it? Here we go. It's like this really gross looking art. Stefano basically kills people in grotesque ways and then, does this to him, basically. Remember the body horror? Yeah, that's what I was telling you about. He basically kills people and then turns it into art. So yeah, Stefano, definitely the best villain in The Evil Within. Like, one of the best villains. Besides the Keeper and Laura, Stefano is definitely my favorite villain. But yeah, the scare factor in The Evil Within 2 It is pretty good. Besides some of the look and art design of the enemies, the psychological horror in this game works amazingly well. It's very reminiscent of PT Silent Hill at times, like, and that just makes it even better with some of the disturbing imagery. Like, I've said this before and I'll say it again. Disturbing imagery is very good for horror games and horror movies because you show the audience or the player something that looks terrifying, disturbing, or unsettling, that will stay in their minds long after the game or the movie has ended. That's the beauty of disturbing imagery or horror imagery, because when you show someone something terrifying, it'll stay in their minds, because that's how fear works, because obviously the human brain likes to make us afraid. You know, our minds are dicks like that. So that's why disturbing imagery in horror imagery is so good. And thankfully, The Evil Within 2 has plenty of that. That's pretty much it though. There are also a lot of intense and heart-pounding segments with the game as well. And again, this just makes the gameplay even better. And what I mean by heart-pounding and intense segments, I don't mean boss fights. I just mean there is a lot of heart-pounding moments in this game. Basically moments where you have the potential of dying really quickly. And, you know, obviously surviving it makes it both satisfying but still heart-pounding. So the segments are really good in this game as well. Like, some of them are moments where you're just being overran with a lot of enemies. Other times, it's moments where you're being chased by insta-kill enemies as well. Oh, there was one other boss fight that I forgot to mention. I'm not going to spoil it for you guys. Like, I'm not going to spoil it. Look up some of the enemies if you have not played this game already, or just play the game. I don't know, but play this game. Like if you're still here and if you're still watching this review, play this game. Get out of here, buy this game, play this game. So yeah, that about covers it for the gameplay side of The Evil Within 2. This game and its gameplay are amazing. The other thing I want to talk about now is honestly the characters. I usually don't talk about characters in my reviews, but man, the characters in The Evil Within 2 are pretty good. They're definitely somewhat of an improvement from the first game. I mean, the first game you had characters like Leslie, you had Drusilla Jimenez, you had Sebastian, obviously you had Joseph Yoda, you had Kidman, who does make a return, by the way. And then you had good antagonists. The Evil Within 2 definitely does have some very, very good characters. Sebastian in general, you know, the main protagonist of the both the Evil Within games, Sebastian is a much better character in this game. The story in general of the Evil Within 2 is a lot more darker. It's a lot more sadder. It's a lot more emotional. The stakes are a lot more high. I also like how they made Union and gave, or not Union, but Mobius. Mobius is basically the evil corporation behind both of the events of, you know, both Evil Within 1 and 2. You have Murkoff Corporation, you have Umbrella, now you have Mobius. Mobius was definitely given a lot more spotlight in the Evil Within 2, so, you know, that definitely makes the story better. It has kind of like a conspiracy theory aspect to it as well, and kind of like a dark secret type thing going for it. So yeah, the story was definitely very, very good in The Evil Within 2, as well as the character. Sebastian is such a good character in this game. The voice actor was good too. Unfortunately, the voice actor really does not get a lot of recognition. Like, I don't think he's even played in any other role, so that's pretty sad actually, because his voice actor is so fucking awesome. But yeah, Sebastian is definitely the best character in The Evil Within 2. His character development was amazing, and so was Kidman's. You know, Kidman makes a return from The Evil Within 1. She's kind of like the second protagonist of the game, as well as Sebastian's family. I'm not going to spoil the rest of the story more than I already have, because as you guys know, I do not spoil stories on here, but the story for The Evil Within 2, it is amazing. Like, it is really good, trust me. The story is really good. Last thing to talk about right now is some collectibles. Those psychological segments, like, that pretty much does it for this review, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. Last thing I want to talk about real quick is the game's graphics. Usually I don't care much about graphics, but holy crap, this game looks beautiful. This is a screenshot I took. Oh, come on, Xbox. This is a screenshot I took. This is from one of the levels. Like, this is actually from the final part of the game. This game's graphics are amazing. Besides the art directory and art design in general, the graphics for this game are pretty damn amazing. The fact this game came out in 2017, I mean, well, hey, so did Red Dead Redemption 2 in 2018, so I guess I shouldn't be too surprised. But man, this game looks amazing. It looks better than the Evil Within for the most part, the first Evil Within. In terms of performance, the game has two modes for performance. You have basically a 30 FPS mode as well as a unlocked 60 FPS mode. I played this on Xbox Series D, so graphics and performance was definitely pretty good. Next thing I want to talk about real quick is the soundtrack. The soundtrack for the Evil Within 2 is amazing. It's beautiful, it's haunting at times, and sometimes it's just downright terrifying. But yeah, guys, this pretty much does it for my review of the Evil Within 2. This game is absolutely incredible. Like, I honestly don't know what else to say. To me, this game is honestly a 9 out of 10. One other thing I wanted to mention real quick is you also have a first-person mode for this game as well. Of course, you need a Bethesda account to do that. Kind of shitty, but still cool. You also have cheat codes as well. We're not cheat codes, but you have an invincibility mode. You have a super strength mode as well as an infinite sprint mode. So if you're a person who just wants to have a little bit of mindless fun, go on a little bit of a killing spree, that's optional. That's good. But yeah, guys, the Evil Within 2. This game is absolutely amazing. I find it really, really disappointing how underrated this game is. Like, this game is absolutely incredible. To me, this is one of the best survival horror games ever made. It is unlike any survival horror game I have ever played. I love both of the Evil Within games so much, not just because of their gameplay and because of how unrestricted their gameplay is, but also just because of the story and the characters. Like, I am a huge fan of psychological horror. Like, I like games like Dead Space and Resident Evil, but I am more of a fan of otherworldly and supernatural type horror as well as psychological horror. And the fact that the Evil Within takes survival horror and combines it with psychological horror is the reason why I love both the Evil Within 1 and 2 so much. They're both honestly my favorite survival horror games of all time. Like, both of them. Like even though I love the second game to death, the first game also has a very special place in my heart, always will, because the first Evil Within was actually one of my first great survival horror games I ever played. And I'll always love it for that. And the second game I will forever love. So the first Evil Within, the second, I love both of these games so much. They are both my favorite horror games of all time, my favorite survival horror games of all time, my favorite games of all time in general. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this review. Let me know what you think about the Evil Within 2. Let me know what you think about the Evil Within games in general. If you stuck by till the end, and if you watched this whole review, I really hope you guys enjoyed it. This is my first long review on my channel as well, 47 minutes and still going. So I really hope you guys enjoyed my first ever full-length review on my channel. Expect more of these fleshed out reviews. One other thing I actually forgot to mention is the details. Like, not only does the Evil Within 2, like, not only is this game amazing, but even the details are great. This game had so much love put into it. The amount of love that was put into this game proves my point that when a developer puts a lot of love and a lot of care and a lot of dedication into the game that they are making, you know that that is going to be one hell of a good game, because that's what makes good games. Good developers who actually give a shit about making the game good in the first place, when they care enough about it and when they actually love the game that they are making and they love the gamers, meaning us, you know it's going to be a fine game. And the Evil Within 2, even the Evil Within 1, these games are perfect in my opinion. These games are amazing. I really hope you guys enjoyed this review. Thank you so very much for watching this review. I really appreciate it. You subscribers are the reasons why I continue to do what I do. A quick shout out to all of my loyal subscribers as well. I love you guys all so much. You are the reasons why I do what I do, and I'm so glad we are growing over 400 subscribers. I never thought I would get there. So, yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching my Evil Within 2 review, and I will see you guys in the next discussion video. Take care, y'all. Peace.